And we finish out the section with our A-B set, passage A about Karl Popper and how he put too much importance on the power of negative evidence. The author is saying positive evidence, I'm in line 30, is never conclusive, but negative evidence rarely is either. So it's not that negative evidence is wrong, it's just that it's not as powerful as Popper would have us believe, and passage B seems to exist in order to further that point. You know, talks about how when we were trying to figure out what to do with Uranus, we questioned whether it was an error in Newtonian theory or whether it was an error in our auxiliary assumptions, which is a term the author of A used also. Whether there was some other planet nearby that we didn't know about. You know, so we got a disconfirming result, but it was not dispositive. Just like in passage A, negative evidence rarely is, that is, conclusive either. All right, a central topic of both passages in question 20, negative evidence. Yay, answer choice C, the easiest question ever, hurrah. Question 21, something that is mentioned in passage A that is later illustrated in passage B. I'll point to line 20. If a theory deductively entails a false prediction, the theory must be false as well. So we mentioned the idea of trying to disprove a theory, and at the end of passage B, we do just that. We disprove, we reject Newton's theory of gravity and increase our confidence in Einstein's theory. That's answer choice C. For question 22, we want something in passage B that is an example of a disturbing force. So we got to start with what a disturbing force is. In passage A, line 22, when they actually derive a theory's predictions, they almost always need diverse additional auxiliary premises. Those are appeals to other theories, to the correct functioning of their instruments. You got to make sure that you're actually measuring what you think you're measuring, and the absence of disturbing forces. What would a disturbing force be then? It would be something we don't know about that is screwing up our results. So an example of something that we don't know about that is screwing up our results, well, line 39. When the astronomers made their observations, they found that the orbit they'd predicted for Uranus was incorrect. So now we start ticking off the possible problems. One possible problem was Newton's laws were incorrect. Another was that there was an error in their auxiliary assumptions. And it turns out that not long afterwards, scientists discovered, I'm in line 49, the planet Neptune in the precise place it would have to be to have screwed up their originals and make their new calculations fall into line. So, Neptune is something that they did not know about that was messing with their calculations. It is that disturbing force. Answer choice C. Question 23 is basically a vocabulary question. What does the author mean when she says that Popper gives the idea hyperbolic application? Hyperbole is overstatement. She is saying that he has overstated the importance of negative evidence. D, he has drawn too radical a conclusion from the idea. When he says that it is the heart of scientific research, then he's overstating things. 24, we want an example of the last line in passage A. That last line was the negative evidence is rarely dispositive, rarely conclusive, rarely gives us proof. Well, an example of that would be the problem we had with Uranus. What? I'm 11 in my heart and soul. And not the discovery of the planet in answer choice A, but our initial failure of Newton's laws. Because at first, obviously our predictions had not been borne out, but we did not know why. The negative evidence was not persuasive or conclusive. Contrast that against, for example, answer choice C, if that were attractive. In that instance, we figured out why. Newton's laws were wrong. that is a case of negative evidence winning the day. That's not an example of negative evidence not being conclusive. Okay. 25, we're doing that same thing again. It's like all of passage B just illustrates the ideas of passage A. The idea of the black swan is a piece of negative evidence that is conclusive. What was conclusive? We just talked about this in 24. What was conclusive was Mercury and how it led us to dispense with Newtonian theory. Line 61, the old auxiliary assumptions predicted the observed orbit of Mercury, and that led us to rejecting Newton's theory of gravity. Mercury led to the rejection in the same way that a black swan would lead to the rejection. And that's why answer choice A is right. For question 26, we know that passage B would be skeptical of the idea in answer choice B that positive evidence plays no role. We know that they don't believe that because Mercury, the discovery of Mercury led us to reject Newtonian theory, yes, but it also led us to lean toward Einsteinian theory. Line 58, when Einstein's general theory of relativity was introduced, astronomers discovered that calculations based on that theory predicted Mercury. And that led to increased confidence in Einstein's theory. There's no way then to say that positive evidence plays no role. It led directly to increased confidence in Einstein's theory. And that's just what we have to have, the passage saying it. 27 is, I think, a little bit easier because we've already established in 22 that Neptune was a disturbing force. So if we want something that is analogous to the discovery of Neptune, we want somebody discovering a disturbing force. And that is exactly what happens in answer choice E. And when you go back to the passage to derive an answer before you even start looking at answer choices, you're not tempted by bad answers, and you know what you're looking for, and you can recognize it when you see it. And that finishes off this passage, and that finishes off this section.